What is up, everybody? Let me make sure everything's working. This is my first live stream on this channel. Usually, I'm not the MC. So, all right. Yeah, welcome. I've got a few topics that I want to discuss, so I figured I'd jump on a live stream and talk about them. Thanks for being here live. If you're here live, and I think I'm going to make these a more regular thing. So, yeah, I appreciate you joining the first one. Okay, yeah. So there's a few topics I wanted to talk about at a high level. I guess I'll go over the agenda. We'll start with Dencun because it's the night before Dencun, which is the next Ethereum hard fork. Pretty much the biggest hard fork or upgrade to the Ethereum network since Shanghai, which was quite some time ago. It was probably definitely over 6 months ago, I think. So yeah, it's a really exciting time. The main EIPs 4844. I'll share my screen here. I've got some cool visuals actually um, that I'll show you. So if I can, well, that kind of looks ugly. Let's try something else. There we go. Yeah, so this is just some CoinDesk article on it, but there is this cool website that is probably going to break for me here while I'm doing it live, but I'll throw it in chat. It's called Transaction Street, basically txstreets.com. And let me see if I can put that in chat here. I'm going to refresh it because it doesn't look like it's working, to be honest. But this is basically like a blockchain explorer. There we go. This looks a little bit better, but visualized. And I think it's really helpful to see basically the batch transactions they're coming in from an L2 here. If I adjust this, so on the right you can see this is Arbitrum pending batch count, the median transactions popping up, and over here you should see a little bit more Ethereum transactions. Well, fewer Ethereum transactions, but going through as well. But anyway, we can just look at the one on the right. Basically, you can see what applications they're coming from and how they're included in the blockchain and they're batched over time. So thought that was really interesting. The main upgrade in the Dencun hard fork is EIP 4844, which should overnight basically decrease gas fees on Ethereum by about 80%, is what most experts have been telling me, right? So I've talked to people who are building optimistic rollups, who are building ZK rollups, and the consensus is that L2 transaction fees drop by 80%. Now that's not Ethereum mainnet transaction fees. That's L2 transaction fees, because basically they are adding what they're calling blob space. So I'll throw up the Ethereum roadmap here, and these are all the different elements of upgrading the Ethereum network. And what we are working on, what the Ethereum community is working on with this update, is the surge. So the surge is basically trying to increase the amount of transactions, increase the efficiency, and decrease the cost of using Ethereum and rollups, and so that's basically what 4844 is accomplishing by separating the fee markets for block space and blob space, as they're calling it. So if we are a user making transactions on Ethereum mainnet, that kind of goes into one section, and if we are an L2 making transactions on mainnet, actually is stored differently now. So those are no longer basically competing for transaction space on the network, for block space on the network. They're like two separate fee markets. And I'll show another cool visual: ultrasound.money. And hopefully it loads pretty fast while we're live. Okay, cool. So you can see this is ultrasound.money. It's probably like the coolest network or coolest website in the for the ETH maxis and the Ethereum ecosystem. And if we put since merge here, we'll see the basically inflation rate of ETH, which has been negative since the merge. If we scroll down a little bit more, we'll see the burn leaderboard. So all the transactions, all the base fees paid on the Ethereum network are burned. That happened a while ago, like August of 2021 with EIP 1559. But we'll notice that there's not just applications and smart contracts that are on here on the L1, but there's also L2s on here like Arbitrum, their sequencer inbox, ZK Sync Era, Starkware, Linea. So you can see that these L2s are major consumers of block space. And so now those consumers of block space are going to basically have their own fee market. So they won't be gunked up by the rest of the transactions on L1. And so that should result in about immediate 5x. Some people say 10x, but usually the more techie and plugged in people I talk to say closer to a 5x increase in block space supply on any given L2, which means that if you were paying 50 cents for an Arbitrum swap today, or 25 cents, you can expect about an 80% discount. So maybe 10 cents or 5 cents. And then, that's a result from an increase in supply. But if you've studied basic economics, you probably know that as supply increases, all else equal, price goes down. So that's what we're going to observe most likely just about immediately in the coming days on all these L2s. But whenever supply increases, price goes down, there's a lower price that might affect the demand curve as well, right? It might affect the demand that users have to produce transactions. So kind of my hypothesis is that this will result in more transactions overall on L2s that then bring the price up over the coming days and weeks. The price of transaction fees will increase again. Now, or will they increase to the level where they're at now? Maybe, probably not, at least not until we get to a really frothy point in the bull market. And of course, it's going to depend on the L2, right? Some L2 space is more valuable than others. Some L2s have different costs, whether they're ZK or optimistic rollups. So it all depends, but all else equal, we'll see about an 80% decrease in L2 transaction fees starting tomorrow. So that's really exciting. At a high level, I guess some of the other elements of the Ethereum roadmap are the scourge, the verge, the purge, and the splurge. The splurge being everything extra, the purge being getting rid of expiring state, easier to run a node without having to have as much hard drive storage. The verge involves vertical trees and snarks and all sorts of technical topics. There's actually a really great Bankless podcast they released a couple weeks ago that goes through every single element of the broader Ethereum roadmap. The scourge focusing around MEV, and the merge, which is mostly behind us, but there are still some improvements to be made on finality times, and then the surge is what EIP 4844 is working on now. So all very exciting. I guess I'll check the stream if there's any kind of questions or comments, and if not, I'll jump to on-chain lending. So on-chain lending right now has been going nuts as the demand for borrowing stable coins has skyrocketed. So if we look at this tweet from Thomas Matamore from the Reserve Protocol, I believe, he is sharing like this Dune dashboard that looks really cool, that aggregates lending rates and borrowing rates across different chains. Now, I think this is the lending rates. Yeah. So you can basically supply Athena's USDE, which we'll get to at the tail end of this, or USDC or LUSD or DAI or USDT for, anywhere from 18% to 60% across some regular lending protocols like Aave and Compound are on here. And obviously Yearn Vault for USDC that probably implement those underlying lending markets as well. But all this has actually caused some issues with the Maker protocol and the DAI protocol, which has elicited a response from MakerDAO to one second. Okay. Yeah, it's a elicited response from MakerDAO to increase their borrow rate. So why would they do this? Okay. Think about it like this. If I can lend USDE, or if I can stake USDE, Athena, which we'll get into how that works and how it actually generates this massive yield. But if I have stablecoin yield strategies that can generate 50% or even 20% APY on, or APR even on stablecoins, then I can borrow them for single digits. Then I have a market incentive to basically borrow stablecoins, sell those stablecoins immediately, and then enter a strategy that is higher yield, like Athena's SUSDE staking strategy. So that created a lot of downward pressure on some CDP stablecoins like DAI, where you have the supply of DAI being minted and then sold, so that people can arb that price difference. But that puts pressure on the peg. So you need to find a way to stabilize the peg and create some sort of organic demand. Now, MakerDAO has I believe they call it the PSM, the Protocol Stability Mechanism, and that has extra funds in it to buy DAI and different mechanisms to keep DAI at its peg. But that was getting stressed. And there are, certain liquidity constraints, even though DAI is very over collateralized, there are certain liquidity constraints, especially with their T-bills and some things they have in TradFi that might, expire, not daily, and, you have to clear things from the banking system and yada, yada, yada. So in kind of an emergency effort, they increase the borrowing rates on their DAI vaults from roughly 6 to 7% to 15 to 17% across the different collateral types. So, that will hopefully do two things. Number one, it will increase the revenue of the Maker protocol so that they're able to keep the stability mechanism well funded. And two, it will put upwards pressure on the DAI peg, because now all of a sudden, if you had a 6% APR loan and now it's a 16% APR loan, well, maybe you're going to pay it back now. So that requires you going to the open market, buying DAI, and then basically paying back the loan that is denominated in DAI, which removes that DAI from supply and puts upward pressure on the peg. So it's pretty scary stuff, honestly. If you have large maker vaults that can double in borrowing rates seemingly overnight. If you're not plugged in, then I'm sure there's a lot of people with maker vaults who don't even realize this yet. But that's kind of the risk that you run when you're in DeFi, and the market conditions can change very quick. So I remember it was like maybe 6 months ago that I was discussing the low rates on chain. You could actually borrow below the federal funds rate. And that's because you had a lot of people who were just bearish and sitting in USDC or Tether and were putting that on Aave, or they were putting that on Compound or any of these other Aave forks or any of these lending markets. And there was really low demand for borrowing stables. And now the opposite has happened. Everybody's in ETH, everybody's in Bitcoin, everybody's in Sol, and they are borrowing Tether and USDC to leverage long. Funding rates are typically skewed pretty far positive, and there's just this kind of demand on chain to borrow, and that's caused it's caused ripples throughout the entire market, including protocols like MakerDAO. So another kind of knock-on effect of this is really interesting. Now this tweet's pretty bold up on Aave. I'm sure Aave will do well as far as the token goes. Obviously, I'm not a financial advisor, and none of this is financial advice or anything. I don't hold any Aave because I do think there's definitely opportunity cost to it. But I'm sure all these developments are bullish for Aave, especially when you consider there's a governance proposal to add SUSDE. Now that's Athena stablecoin. I'll talk about that at the end here in a few minutes. But SUSDE what you have to know to really understand the impacts on this is it is a synthetic dollar pegged crypto asset. Uh, I don't want to use the term stablecoin. I don't think they want to use the term stablecoin, but it is a crypto token that aims to mirror the price of the dollar. It aims to be close to one USD, and it achieves this through a strategy that we'll discuss in a few minutes. And basically, that strategy is able to currently, in current market conditions, big caveat, yield 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% APR. Fluctuates quite a bit. But yeah, that high APR means people want to sit in it. It's a dollar peg crypto asset that is yielding that high. People want to have it. So again, that's causing downwards pressure on other CDP stablecoins. It's causing upwards pressure on lending and borrowing rates for stablecoins across all of DeFi and all these lending markets. And obviously wanting to capitalize on that by allowing USDE to be collateralized in Aave. So that's what this proposal is for. So you could have rates on this stable coin that is your collateral asset above 30%, and then you can borrow against it. So what's that going to create? It's going to mean that if this passes, which this causes a little bit of more, a little bit more systemic risk to Aave. It causes a lot of demand for the protocol as well, though. So basically, if people are allowed to deposit this really high interest bearing collateral, and then they can use that to borrow other stablecoins like Tether or USDC, well then they'll be able to loop that essentially, right? They'll be able to deposit USD or SUSDE staked USDE collateral, borrow maybe USDC, convert that USDC, which has no native yield, into a 50+% native yielding stablecoin, and then redeposit that as collateral. There'll be an immense market incentive to basically deposit SUSDE. Nobody's going to want to be borrowing this because of its high native yield, but they'll be using this collateral. They'll be borrowing tons of Tether, tons of USDC, tons of LUSD, tons of DAI, and they'll be dumping those stablecoins for more high yield Athena dollars, right? So what's that going to do? It's going to drive lending rates for. So let's say you don't want to have exposure to SUSDE. That's fine. Well, if this passes, you'll have kind of tail risk exposure to it if you're deposited on Aave, whether you like it or not. But maybe there are other lending markets you are a part of that don't have exposure to this. Those lending for USDC and Tether and all stablecoins across all of DeFi, if this passes, will be driven up even more. So yeah, I mean we're officially back in terms of on-chain yields. But who wants to be sitting in stablecoins at this stage of the market anyway, right? So I mean, at this stage of the market cycle, just about everybody wants to be long. So yeah, I won't be taking advantage of these stablecoin yields because I don't have a whole lot of stablecoins, to be honest. So, but this is risky for Aave, right? If SUSDE, if Athena USD has any catastrophic events, right, then it could cause bad debt in the protocol. They go even further into this governance proposal. But in the meantime, if that doesn't happen, or until it does, it could drive significant revenues for the Aave protocol. So, yeah, so it's an exciting time to be a stablecoin farmer. Hopefully, if you're sidelined, that gives you a little bit of comfort. Hopefully, a little bit of comfort. Okay. Final topic before I move on to explaining Athena a little bit more and how that works is the wormhole airdrop. Really cool thing about the wormhole airdrop is even though the token is not live yet, which has a 10 billion max supply, you can trade it if you're not in the US. Maybe a week is too long, maybe 4-hour candles. Yeah, there we go. On Avo. So app.avo.xyz. Not for US citizens. I do not use this. I'm just viewing it. This allows you basically to trade tokens that aren't even liquid yet. So you can trade and kind of have some price discovery here while the token's not even live. So that's cool. So right now it's trading $1.60. Well, it's trading at $2. It's dropped a little bit over the last. Oh, I thought it was trading at $2 at one point. Maybe not. Or maybe this chart's just kind of old, or doesn't go back far enough. 15 to $20 billion valuation looks likely at launch. Maybe higher, maybe lower, depending on market conditions leading up to then. Of course, there'll be a lot of volatility there. I actually got quite a bit of these W tokens, but only across my Solana wallets. I don't think any of my EVM wallets got this. So they said that using any of these chains, yada yada, qualified you for the airdrop. But definitely check it across all your wallets. Especially don't let any Solana wallets sneak by. This is pretty significant airdrop. I know multiple people who are receiving 5-figure airdrops from this, so it's pretty sweet. I haven't gotten one kind of this magnitude since Arbitrum, so pretty crazy how just using DeFi will pay you many countries median salary every couple months in airdrops. It's almost feels a little bit ridiculous. So, but we'll see how the token trades, and yeah, they also partnered apparently with Allium. Now, this is very important if you are a airdrop farmer. So I don't really consider myself an airdrop farmer. I'm just like a DeFi user, so I receive a lot of airdrops. But if you are an airdrop farmer, then you probably are familiar with the term sibling, basically the act of pretending to be, multiple users or trying to, get an airdrop on many wallets, which inevitably happens because, if you're in DeFi, you probably use many wallets to begin with. So it happens even unintentionally, but the act of intentionally multiplying your exposure to a protocol airdrop is a Sybil attack. So protocols try to prevent this, DeFi apps try to prevent this by spreading out the yield based on certain criteria, right? So this gives us a insight here into how they actually did that, right? How they actually disqualified users who are suspected Sybil wallets and gave preferential airdrops to wallets that were not detected as Sybil. So here you can see, I'm going to try to explain these diagrams. I'll also maybe throw this here. I've got let me drop this in chat. If I pull up the stream, drop this so you can kind of go through it as well. Where is the chat? Well, chat doesn't want to load on my other monitor. Okay. If you go to the description though, my Twitter's in there, and I've retweeted this, so you can go find it there. Okay. Yeah. So the source of funds tracing is number one. So if you have a wallet that is a source wallet, and then it popped up. There we go. There's the chat. Boom. Link there. You have a source wallet, and then that same wallet funds many wallets that are all doing wormhole transactions or all basically interacting with the protocol, then might get got, right? If there's one source wallet. Then I guess you're not safe even if you do something like this, right? You fund one wallet, it funds another wallet, it funds all these, funds all these. That's tough. I mean, that looks pretty, if you're doing that manually, that's no fun, right? So that's a good bit of work, and it still, I guess, got you here. Exchange address. So, I've definitely done this one for several airdrops. And sometimes it works, right? You have one exchange address, and that exchange address, withdraws to many wallets. Apparently, if you're doing different actions on those wallets, you're okay. Right? You're okay, at least for this airdrop. But if you are doing the same action funded from the same exchange address, you're got. It's not working. So I guess the way around here, like currently the meta would be, fund via an exchange address and then have at least the first action on every wallet be unique, right? Maybe the first few actions, right? So do a few transactions before actually doing the activities, like use other protocols, right? First, before doing the activities that are deemed that you believe might get you a future airdrop, if you are a stibbler, right? So, okay, what the heck is going on here? Ownership graph. Consecutive and repeating wormhole transactions in an extremely short period of time. Okay, that makes sense, right? So if you're doing the same action on multiple wallets, maybe with similar amounts as well, because it quotes the amount of ether, right? And you're doing them in an extremely short period of time. This might not apply. Like it says extremely here, and then they underlined it. So my guess is that you probably won't be fast enough if you're doing this manually to trigger this sort of detection, right? Like if you're going from wallet to wallet, like on your hardware wallet or in your web browser, there's going to be some amount of, there's going to be several blocks in between each action just because uh, you're not that fast, right? So this is probably mostly affecting the script oriented airdrop farmers, I would assume. And okay, no, that was transactional spam, not ownership graph. This is ownership graph, right? So I guess just finding a way to link all of your wallets into actually one user. So study this. How does this work? How do they actually link all the addresses to one user? Well, I guess like this, if wow, I mean, I don't know. Like these are all different addresses. If they all end up in one destination or in one interacting with the same contract, I suppose. I don't know. Study this. This is probably the the most difficult thing to avoid if you are just like swapping back and forth between your wallets, sending funds to your own wallets, etc. So like most people I know who are airdrop farming that aren't doing so like in an automated fashion, like they're doing it manually, but they are um, still sibling, right? They're sibling manually, which is it's incredibly time consuming. They're doing something like this typically, which is you have one exchange address. You go to wallet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from that exchange address, and then you do some action from all those wallets. Now, this seems like you would have been okay doing that as long as those each one of those initial actions were different actions. You didn't just go exchange address to wormhole bridge, wormhole bridge, wormhole bridge, wormhole bridge, especially with the same amount, especially in a very fast fashion, right? Um, and especially if you weren't intermingling the funds from those wallets. So if you're doing something like this, but keep it to the left side, action A, action B, that's probably the best route for basically sibling manually. Anyway, bit of a bit of a dive there, a bit of a deep dive into into this wormhole Sybil detection. I think that I kind of tweeted this somewhat ironically because this is the meme that's going around, like study this, right? But seriously, like if you are, I've been farming airdrops. I posted about Matic on my Substack, right? And I pretty much did this. I pretty much did this on the right here, where I withdrew from exchange address to many different addresses and then did the same thing, right? So should I mix that up? I don't know. I probably should. Luckily, I've avoided on some of my airdrop endeavors maybe intermingling on some wallets, but definitely I think that a lot of people are going to get got by this, and a lot of people probably missed out on the airdrop from what I hear because of this and because of the ownership thing. So yeah, very interesting. If you are sibling, guys, the main takeaway here is don't intermingle the funds. Don't do so in such a fast automated fashion that it's going to be picked up by automated spam. Um, don't fund from the same wallet, right? Don't fund from one source wallet. Fund from an exchange, But then when those funds hit each wallet, do a different initial action, at least one different initial action per wallet that receives funds from the exchange wallet. So, swap around a little bit, use other DeFi protocols for 1 to 3 transactions minimum, and then do the activity that you believe might result in fulfilling some sort of airdrop criteria. Now, you can also avoid all that and not concern yourself with any of this, and you still might get a bunch of airdrops because that's pretty much what I do. I just use a bunch of DeFi and get a bunch of airdrops. So, yeah, so that's definitely an option. Okay, moving on. Final topic, probably the craziest one: Athena, Dust on Crust, Part 2. I highly recommend. Here, I'll throw this in chat. If you want to spend 20 minutes learning about the craziest, we'll call it a synthetic crypto dollar, that's kind of messing up all the lending markets right now. That's not single-handedly, but definitely playing a large role. That's growing incredibly fast. Let me pull up, not DeFi Llama. Let's pull this up and let's go to. I think I can maybe just go right to stable coins. There we go. Stable coins for DeFi Llama. These are I'll throw this in chat as well. Like these are all the stable coins that DeFi Llama is picking up. Check them out. But okay, where is Athena? It's number 3. Oh my goodness, it's number 3. Wow, this is like the fastest growing stablecoin ever. This is almost $1 billion stablecoin, and it's been live for, I'm fairly certain, less than a month. It is growing incredibly fast, and it's only currently on Ethereum mainnet. Is that true? Can you only mint Athena on mainnet? I believe so. That's crazy. That's crazy. Okay. I'm also going to reference, if you don't have the time to read that entire Arthur Hayes article, which might take you a good 25 minutes, you can read this JPEG summary from this guy, Jay. And that's what I'm going to skim to give you the lowdown of how this stablecoin works. It's growing so fast because it has such a high yield. And you might be thinking, oh, like stablecoin growing incredibly fast because it's high yield. Heard that before. Sounds like it's going to explode. Yeah, it might explode, but not for the same reasons. And if it explodes, it might explode very slowly instead of all at once. But or it could be all at once. It just depends. But I'll explain. So where does yield come from? First things first. The yield is anywhere between, I think, like 30 and 80%, depending on market conditions, while everybody is long. That's very important because Athena achieves delta neutral yield, meaning it's not affected by market price, generally speaking, by being long ETH, and not just any ETH, staked ETH. So all of its collateral is earning 4% yield for staked ETH, whatever. And then that allows you to mint stablecoin. When you deposit USDC or something into Athena, they sell the USDC for staked ETH. They hold that staked ETH, and then to achieve delta neutral status, right, to not be exposed to the price of ETH, they short ETH perps on a variety of different exchange platforms, including on-chain and off-chain exchanges. And they list some of those out here. I type in exchange partners. There we go. Binance, Bybit, via Marana. Don't kind of know what that is. OKX Ventures, Deribit, Gemini, and Kraken are on the cap table. They're also using synthetics as well to short the perp. So when you short the perp, you cancel out your exposure. So they have no long exposure. Generally speaking, there's some technicalities in there. Generally speaking, they have no long exposure to ETH, and they're not short either. They're delta neutral, and that allows them to collect yield currently on both sides of that trade. Right, on the long staked ETH side, they're collecting about a 4% yield. On the short perp ETH side, they are collecting 20%, 30%, 40%, whatever funding rates are across all these different exchange partners, which generally speaking in these market conditions are incredibly high. So, the funding rate is basically the rate that the longs pay the shorts if there are more longs. And if funding flips negative, the shorts pay the longs if there's more shorts. And currently there's a lot more longs than shorts. And generally speaking, there's a lot more longs than shorts. So he actually did a little bit of an analysis here. The open interest weighted funding annualized. So the mean funding across, I guess, the last however many years this analysis goes to, it's about 8%. The median is 6.9. The 10th percentile, meaning 10% of the time, the worst case scenario for the worst 10% is -5%, which means the shorts are paying the longs in order for the privileged short, right? Um, Whenever that happens, it's generally, uh, if it's sustained negative funding for a prolonged period of time, it's generally during a pretty bearish period of the market, right? Generally speaking, markets are long, which means the shorts are or the longs are paying the shorts. And when markets are really excited, it could be 20% or more, like we've seen recently with a max funding of 147% according to their analysis. Um, and these are the percentage of days below zero. So so 80% of the time, the longs are paying the shorts. 20% of the time, shorts are paying the longs. Whereas below -3, 12%, whereas below -5, 10%. So generally speaking, all else equal, if you're short 1x, you're getting paid funding. And I guess Arthur Hayes' logic in this article is, well, ETH is a deflationary currency. The US dollar is an inflationary currency. So there's less ETH, more USD. Then ETH USD should trade and exchange on a forward basis. It should basically, generally speaking, continue to have a positive funding rate, which means that Athena should be able to collect this spread. Now you can actually do this manually, right? Like if you don't want to have or if you don't want to have exposure to the smart contract versus Athena, if you don't want to have exposure to certain exchanges, you can do this all yourself on chain. You can long stake ETH and you can short on Avo, which I just showed you, or Hyperliquid, or GMX V2, not V1 because it doesn't have funding fees. Synthetics, Quinta built on top of Synthetics, whatever. You can do this manually yourself, but Athena basically just does all for you, right? And it creates a DeFi primitive product that is, hey, this is basically, I believe it's a cash and carry trade. I'm not a TradFi guy, but I believe that's what it's called, for long staked ETH and shorting the perp. So crazy, right? So there are risks, but just about all of this yield goes to the stakers. I think all the yield actually goes to stakers, and then there is some USDE that is not staked. And if it's not staked, that yield goes to the insurance fund. And so the insurance fund is, supposed to be there in the event that funding does flip negative for a prolonged period of time. If funding does flip negative, I think there's also ways for Athena to reduce the circulating supply of USDE to reduce the bleed. But again, like with UST and Luna, which is what everybody has PTSD from, that was a algorithmically collateralized stablecoin, meaning that it was backed by the faith in Luna. This is actually backed by staked ETH and perp contracts on centralized exchanges, which it's not decentralized, right? But it is not uncollateralized. It is collateralized with basically a delta neutral cash and carry trade, right? So could it get rugged by potentially the exchanges? Perhaps they actually work directly with custodians. So there's like a separation between funds from the exchange partners, and the funds aren't necessarily sitting on the exchanges. They're with custodians that partner with those exchanges, which is pretty interesting. And yeah, and it's essentially, it's while funding is so positive, like since everybody wants to be long, it's creating this very interesting market dynamic where everybody wants to be long and nobody wants to hold stable coins, which means SUSDE has this incredible yield on it, which is causing people to borrow stable coins from all over DeFi. The few that are on lending markets, because nobody wants to be depositing stable coins and lending them out because everybody wants to be a long spot at least, or long perps apparently. And that's basically driving up yields to bring us full circle to what I covered here, which is the yields across even other stablecoins like USDC or Tether are going nuts. They're going nuts, and that'll continue until market conditions worsen, right? Until people don't want to be long, until funding reduces. So I think this is a new environment, right? And I'll show another tweet that I posted previously that is, study Athena Labs' relative impact or reflexive impact on ETH price. So when all these stables are getting borrowed from lending markets, they're getting deposited into Athena, they are buying spot ETH, right? And then they're staking it. And so during any period where there's positive funding, and which is most of the time, and Athena can arb that with their exchange partners, the supply of Athena should be increasing, and that should be, this is $1 billion in Athena is $1 billion in buy pressure for ETH. So if Athena supply shrinks, right, and funding flips negative, then it could go the opposite way, right? It could create more sell pressure for ETH. But I also think it's really interesting the reflexive impact that Athena has on the ETH price. Yeah. But yeah, super cool stuff. We've been live for about 45 minutes here. Um, Thanks for jumping on, anybody who's live. This was a great time. Um, I have not done one of these on this channel. I don't think ever I've live streamed on this channel. So um, subscribe if you want to see more. And I'm going to do this more regularly to hopefully get a bigger live audience. But if you're watching the recording, thanks for watching as well. If you have any questions, you can drop in chat, DM me on Twitter, and yeah, check the description for any relevant links. Yeah. But thanks for coming, everybody. Talk to you soon. Peace.